to Let's Talk Migraine, where we talk about some of the hottest topics faced by people who live with this disabling and complex neurological disorder that affects nearly 40 million people in the US alone and 1 billion globally. Today, we're going to be talking about a particularly challenging topic for many of us. It seems as though there is nothing quite like chronic illness for eliciting unwanted advice and often hurtful comments from others. Figuring out how to navigate this can be incredibly challenging, to say the least. So, Erin, why do you think that this topic is so important for us to talk about?
Well, we all have friends and family that like to give us advice, whether it be through Facebook or through just gatherings, such as, my mom gets them and this works for her, or I saw this on Facebook, try drinking this and, do whatever. It just, people don't understand that majority of us that suffer from migraine have tried nearly everything that's out there. We're the ones that are in pain and we want it to stop. So we're willing to try just about everything, but the hurtful comments of that kind of come across condescendingly are difficult to handle. And a lot of times, we want to share our experience with them, but it's a back and forth battle with them. So I usually try to politely correct them or, thank them, depending on the situation, but it's difficult to get through sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely is difficult to get through. And I think that I know for myself that how I deal with it depends on how I'm feeling that particular day and who the person is and where I sense they're coming from, which obviously isn't always accurate. So what about you, Angel? Why do you think that this is such an important topic to deal with? And what are some of the things that you've heard or read that are most unhelpful?
I think the reason why I find them so hurtful is the assumption that we aren't trying to do something to stop this pain, to say, well, I know there's something they can do. Well, unless you know exactly what can be done for my particular type of migraine, then please let me continue my relationship with my medical professionals who know intimately what's going on with me. The most hurtful of comments is, oh, you should just stop stressing. Oh, you should just drink more water. I drink over a gallon of water a day. I do all the things for self-care. That does not take away the genetic problem that has generated my migraine attacks. And so those are the ones that I find most hurtful and disempowering, in fact.
Right. And that's so sad when you're dealing with a disease that can be as devastating as migraine. Anything that takes away from us can just be devastating completely. So when something is disempowering, that's really not a good situation. And I know that you relate to this, Carrie. Saw you just kind of nodding your head when Angel talked about the sense that people think that we're not doing enough or that we're not doing what we need to do. Can you speak a little bit into that?
Sure. So when I was first encountering people, talking to people about migraine, and I'd get these hurtful comments, I would get upset or angry. After the conversation was over, I'd think about snarky things I could have said back to them. And I found that that wasn't helpful for me. That just sort of fueled the fire and made me more upset. And over time, I began to realize that the people who were offering these comments that I found helpful, to them, they were offering advice. They thought they were actually being helpful. And to realize that most people are coming from their own need to help rather than necessarily understanding my situation. And I mean, certainly not understanding the extent of everything that I've tried and what my migraine experience is like. It's just, they saw a story on the news or they heard, like, it's hard because for all of us here today, we live migraine. Like, we're steeped in it, but most people we encounter, they hear migraine and they think, oh, I know this person with migraine, I'm going to tell them about it. And they don't have this full range of experience. So I try to think about where they're coming from. And most of the time when somebody says something, gives me a suggestion of something to try, I thank them and then change the subject. If it's something that I know is there's no research for or could be harmful, I'll let them know that. But for the most part, I focus on reframing and thinking about where the person is coming from and responding to their attempt at kindness rather than only responding from my hurt.
Yeah, I think that that's great. Trying to figure out where someone is coming from makes a huge difference in how we can respond to that, and just also giving ourselves the permission to respond in a way that works for us at that time. If we feel too sick or we're emotionally drained, it's okay just not to respond, to shrug it off. If we feel empowered and the words come to us, then, it's good to be like an ambassador of information, but it's totally up to us. There's no blame or shame in how we respond to people, as long as we're courteous to them. So I know that, Erin, one of the things you've mentioned to me is, that you don't know what you don't know. So can you explain what you mean by that and how that relates to this topic?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Carrie was saying, some people they don't live the life that we live, so they don't know the experience that we go through on a day-to-day basis of having to walk through life like there's landmines everywhere of triggers that may set a migraine attack off. So if somebody doesn't know and they're trying to share information that they might have seen on social media or read an article in a paper, or heard something on the radio, some kind of advertisement, whatever, it's important to recognize that they don't know that we've already gone through so many other options and so many different experimental things that that nobody may have even heard of. So if you don't know, then you don't know.
Right, which seems so logical, but the reality is that at least until recently, so little was known about migraine. There was very little awareness in the general community, and with all the new medications and treatment options that have come out since 2018, I think that is starting to change, especially with the migraine community starting to speak up and share a little bit more. And obviously, that's one of the things that we're hoping to do with these videos, is to raise awareness so that we don't get the hurtful comments as much, so we don't get so much unwanted advice, and just to let people know what that is like to us. If someone says, hey, have you tried this diet, or did you try putting a banana peel on your forehead, or I've heard if you drink cream of tartar in a glass of water, your migraine will just magically go away. So all these crazy things that we hear, it's not just a crazy comment to us, but it can really deeply hurt us, because our response is inside, we're saying we're doing everything we can to try to treat this, and this is not helpful to us. So I just wondered, Angel, what would you find most helpful from someone? So if you know someone and that generally they like to offer advice, they like to fix it, what is actually more helpful from your perspective as someone who lives with migraine?
I appreciate when someone asks me about my migraine. Tell me what it's like. And from there, they have a better understanding that there'll be times where I can't speak. There'll be times where my vision is impaired, where I lose mobility in my arms. And in those situations, I found that in the different places where I volunteer, they pick up on that. And they sometimes will say, Angel's stuttering now. And I speak and I train for a living. So if I start to stutter, they know that I am working through this, and they will provide safety around me and pick up to take some of that bandwidth from me. That to me brings more value than telling me to put my hands and my feet in a bucket of water while I hold something on top of my head. So the advice is support. Now, there have been times where there have been television, documentaries about migraines, and I'll get, Angel, did you see this documentary, or did you read this article? To me, those are more helpful, because what you're doing is giving me the information to decipher and then decide to talk to my doctor, as opposed to drink a glass of tartar sauce.
That's so funny. Angel, what you just said is so true. And I think for some people who are watching this, they are going to think that, people don't really say this stuff. They don't really tell you to put a banana peel on your forehead, or to drink a glass of cream of tartar and water. We hear stuff like that all the time now. And worse than that, more crazy than that, I had a doctor tell me once that I should just try the jungle diet and then all my health problems would just kind of magically disappear. And I think that was probably one of the most hurtful things I've heard from a doctor. I try to avoid him at all costs now. That is a great example of just unhelpful, unwanted advice, and coming from a place of just lack of understanding about this disease. So what is helpful for me is someone saying, how can I help you? Or I believe you, or I see that you're not looking well today. You know, I can see it in your eyes when you look at someone who has migraine. You can often see it in their eyes, or if they walk into a room and they turn the lights down, or if they're to sit down more often than you would think is normal. Those are all signs that that person is struggling. So just asking how you can help, or just giving a hug sometimes is great. So what about you, Carrie? What do you find the most helpful from people?
The most helpful thing is something that Angela touched on, which is that it's okay to share something that you heard on the news with me, but think about how you share it. So don't say, oh, you should try this thing I read or I heard about on the news. It's the approach to say, I heard about this treatment. Is it something that you're familiar with? Tell me more about it. That curiosity and asking me as the expert in my own body, even if I'm not a migraine expert, I know my own body and I know that what I've tried. And so just to approach it as curiosity, as interest in my life and my experience, because I think that is where it's coming from. And it's coming from a place of kindness, and to show that kindness rather than trying to fix it, because you can't fix it for me. And I know my husband has migraine and I really want to fix it for him. And I can't, but I get that instinct. And so there's a different way to approach it that is actually more helpful than just trying to offer a fix.
That's actually a great point that you made. Rather than just saying, hey, I saw this, you should try it. Asking the person, you know, is this something you're aware of? It's empowering to us to hear that. And it's kind of treating us with respect. And I think just that subtle change is so important, because like you say, most people are coming from a positive place. They want to help. They want to fix it. But this is not something that can be fixed. There is no cure for migraine. There is no quick and easy fix. Most of us are just trying to find ways to get through an attack, to deal with a specific situation at a specific point in time. And there is no long-term fix. And that's part of the challenge that we deal with. And other people deal with that when they talk to us. What about you, Erin? What would you find to be some of the most helpful ways for people to talk to you?
So coming from a place of interest and curiosity rather than coming to try to put a Band-Aid on my wounds is really, really much more helpful. I usually have like a 30-second elevator speech to give them my version of what migraine is like for me, so that they're more educated. A lot of times I'll tell people that it's like a neurological short circuit. It's like somebody stuck a fork in the computer and the whole thing just went haywire. And they'll look at me and say, well, it's not just a headache? Well, no, that's one of the symptoms. We all experience a whole lot of other different symptoms that go along with the migraine condition. So just letting them know my perspective on it and what my experience is like with migraine, I feel is giving them the education that they need, so that if they come across somebody else that has migraine, that they're maybe more receptive and understanding of how to help that other person in their life.
Right, absolutely. I love what you said. That's super helpful. The only thing I want to add to this is that, you know, sometimes there are people who are not coming from a helpful place. And so part of the challenge then is knowing, how do we respond to that? It doesn't help us to respond, obviously, in anger. I always say, you know, pause so that you don't react. You want to respond rather than react. And one of the phrases that I use if I feel that someone is just coming from more of a critical place is to say something like, I hear what you're saying, and I hear that a lot. But what is interesting is, and then I kind of launch into something educational, like you say, Erin, just to educate them so that hopefully with the next person, maybe they'll think twice about it. or, maybe it will change their mind, maybe it won't, but at least I feel that I have taken a little bit of control of the situation. Otherwise, it's easy for us to feel a guilt and blame and shame. We already feel that having migraine for all the things we can't do. And so when we hear negative stuff, that sense of negativity just kind of sits on us. And for myself, at least, when I respond like that, I feel like I'm just kind of shrugging it off and saying, yes, but, and responding with something that hopefully is going to be helpful. But obviously, we know it's not easy, and it's a challenge that all of us face. So if you live with migraine, then the chances are that you are all too familiar with this situation, and it may be a challenge for you as well. It's important to remember that most of the advice, most of the comments we get come from a place of caring, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's helpful to you. Unfortunately, the information given is often outdated, it is unhelpful, or could just be inappropriate for your own situation. So remember to vet any advice that you are given. Do some fact checking of your own. Realize that chronic illness is something that most people do not understand, and it's okay to set healthy boundaries for yourself. Even consider having a 30-second elevator speech for a response can be helpful at times. Often this can be a great opportunity to discover your voice and to help raise awareness about what life with migraine is really like.